Okay, hello everyone. We will give maybe some 30 seconds just in case there are still attendees who would like to access. We would like to welcome everyone. We are very excited actually about today's event. May I introduce myself? My name is Sabiha Allouche. I'm the chair of the Outreach and Pedagogy Committee in BRISMES. The other members are Dr. Paola Rivetti and Dr. Sophie Shamas. Unfortunately, they couldn't be with us today. And today we are going to be speaking with several institutions within BIRI. BIRI is the British International Research Institute. They're global research partners in the arts, humanities, and the social sciences. And we have different speakers who are going to introduce us to different institutions. I will first introduce our first speaker, Martyn Weeds, who will give us a general idea about BIRI. Martyn, well, actually, yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So hopefully you should all be able to see the first slide. Just before I hand over to the other speakers tonight to talk in more detail about the funding and other opportunities available from each individual institution, I thought it would be useful to just talk for a couple of minutes about the BIRI more generally, who the BIRI are, where we work, the different disciplines and time periods we cover, what we do, etc. So the first thing to note is that there are actually 9 BIRI, 9 British International Research Institutes, of which 4 are with us this evening. There are the 2 BIRI based in Southern Europe, the BSA and the School at Rome. 3 BIRI who focus mainly on Northern and Eastern Africa, and then the 4 BIRI we're presenting this evening who focus predominantly on Western Asia. Also a little bit more wide, but a bit wider, but we'll come to that in a second. Each institution is a separate entity. So each BIRI has its own constitution, council of management, committees. Most BIRI also have their own staff members, etc. Several BIRI have their own physical premises in either in region or in the UK or both. So we are different. We are separate. Probably most importantly is each BIRI has and sets its own research agenda. So while there are certain topics and themes that cut across several BIRI or all of the BIRI, the individual focus of research and the strategic research initiatives, or it's phrased slightly differently in different institutes, is set on an individual BIRI level. So if you're interested in applying for grants and so forth, it's really important to check the specific focus of research or the areas of research sponsored by the particular BIRI you're interested in. One of the things that all the BIRI have in common is that they are supported by the British Academy, which, as many of you will know, is the UK's National Academy for the Humanities and Social Sciences. And that the BIRI initiative is funded by the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. So the support that each BIRI gets varies slightly, but it generally involves some funding, some administrative and academic support, and many of the BIRI have some form of access to space at the British Academy in London as well. In addition to the sort of formal setup, we're all sort of separate, but we have this sort of common network of the BIRI network. The BIRI also collaborate very much so with each other. And there are certain areas where all 9 BIRI work together, for example, on digitization, because all of the institutes have things like collections, archives, material that has been assembled over the years. And one of the things we're all trying to do is make that more accessible. So one of the areas we're collaborating on is building digital infrastructure to share our collections and materials and resources more widely. Also, sometimes we collaborate on particular themes. For example, on sustainable water management was an initiative that all of the BIRI were involved with to some degree, because obviously that's a topic that has a very wide import. And at the time when this was happening, all of the BIRI had some form of researchers working on water in one way or another. But there are also certain sort of bilateral initiatives. For example, we collaborated with BIPS last year on a conference in Ankara. And there are also projects that involve a subset of the BIRI, for example, currently on climate change and heritage adaptation, which involved the Egypt Exploration Society, BILNAS, CBRL, and the British Institute in Eastern Africa. So sometimes some of us work together where it makes sense to collaborate on issues that affect a particular region. So as I said, the BIRI work across predominantly Northern and Eastern Africa, the Southern Europe, Southern Eastern Europe, and Western Asia. We actually are active in more than 40 countries across those regions. And I think that the key point I'd probably highlight here is that the focus of many of the BIRI's work is wider than you might initially think from either the name of the institute or the location of the physical institutions. For example, the British Institute in Ankara, the BIAA, is physically located in Ankara, but very much focuses on not just Turkey, but also the Black Sea region. So you can see the bit in a kind of dark green there. That's why those countries are sort of involved. If you have a project that focuses mainly in around the Black Sea coast, but maybe doesn't have much or anything to do with Turkey specifically, that's still very much within the BIA's remit. Similarly with BIPS, you can see it's not just Iran, it's the wider Persian world. CBRL, as I'm sure we'll hear later, has institutes in Amman and in Jerusalem, but also works, does research in Syria or relating to Syria, Lebanon, Cyprus, etc. So the geographical reach of the BIRI is actually quite wide. You may also notice from that map that there's the areas that are sort of hatched are areas where actually multiple BIRI operate in that particular country. So Egypt, Sudan, and as I mentioned before, sometimes BIRI collaborate bilaterally or in sort of little groups, and it tends to be where those regions are either sort of next to each other or actually within the same country, and often where the same BIRI is operating in, different BIRI are operating in the same region, the disciplinary focus or the thrust of the research will be different in that particular country. So the BIRI have been around for quite a long time. The oldest BIRI, I think, was established in the 1880s, and the youngest in the 1960s, I believe, late 1960s. So even the youngest of the BIRI has been around for quite a while. All of the BIRI, or certainly most of the BIRI, began life as archaeological research institutes. So the British Institute at Ankara was originally the British Institute of Archaeology at Ankara. And still today, archaeology and related disciplines are an important part of what the BIRI do. But over the last 20 years or so, that disciplinary focus, as well as the sort of the time periods considered, has widened hugely. So today, we can really say that the BIRI are concerned with human history right from human prehistory, right from human origins, right through to the global challenges of the 21st century. And with that comes involvement in a whole range of other disciplines across the arts, humanities, and social sciences. So things like literature, current affairs, public policy, anthropology, ethnography, lots of different things, obviously arts. And more than that, and it's part of the reason I put the Sustainable Water Management conference poster on this slide, is that even beyond the disciplines that the BIRI focus on themselves, all of the BIRI also collaborate in an interdisciplinary way, even beyond the arts, humanities, and social sciences. So, for example, on this project, we had archaeologists and historians for the sort of past part, and people who worked on sort of public policy, urban planning, and things like that for the informing the future part. But there were also hydraulic engineers, structural engineers, geologists, and bringing those people together to talk about a common challenge that's facing the world is a really important part of what the BIRI do, I think. I'm not going to talk much about what the BIRI do, partly because it varies quite a lot between the different institutes, but also partly because that's what the other speakers are going to speak about, particularly when it comes to sort of resources, libraries, funding, collections, things like that, particularly funding. But I think one thing I would like to highlight is that even the largest of the BIRI are fairly small compared to a university, for example, or something like that. And the value I think that the BIRI bring is in forming partnerships, forming collaborations, bringing people together with interests in a particular research topic. And that's really, if we provide funding, it's often with that model as well. So it would be, we sometimes do, but rarely fund entire projects. It tends to be more a little bit of funding to get something started, get a collaboration going, or to bring in other partners who would then also, provide more funding or more resource, etc. So I think the BIRI, as I say, we're individually and even collectively actually quite small, but I think that yeah, our strengths are really in our people, in our networks, and we try to act as conduits and hubs for researchers and students who are interested in the regions that we're interested in. And just finally, if you're interested in learning more about the BIRI generally or the individual institutes, you can visit the URL on the bottom. And that has links to each of the individual 9 BIRI's websites. Also, there is a document which rather grandly is called the BIRI Manifesto, which sort of goes into some of the things I've been talking about in a bit more detail. And there's also a link there where you can sign up for the BIRI newsletter, which is published quarterly by the British Academy and contains sort of 1 or 2 news items from each of the BIRI, which we contribute to. So if you're interested in the BIRI more generally, go check out that link. And that's me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Martyn. That was very informative, walking us through the different institutions of BIRI. And I'm going to take the opportunity to start telling our audience that as the different institutions share their funding opportunities with us, please don't hesitate to use the Q&A logo thingy at the bottom of the screen in case you need additional clarifications or if you have questions. So this takes me now to, the first of the institutions, which is also the British Institute at Ankara, and which is presented today with us by Dr. Peter Cherry. He's an assistant director at BIAA. He's also the author of Muslim Masculinities in Literature and Film, Transcultural Identity and Migration, and articles on the intersections of gender, sexuality, travel, migration, and translation in Turkish and British literature, film, and culture in publications such as the journal Literature Critique and Empire Today, Critical Comparative Studies, and the edited collection Turkish Literature as World Literature. He co-hosts the BIAA's podcast Heritage Turkey, and Peter holds a PhD in comparative literature from the University of Edinburgh. Peter?
Thanks very much. I didn't realize I wrote so much about myself then. That was our introduction, sorry. So without further ado then, let me get started. So this is going to be talking a little bit about the funding opportunities, primarily for researchers in Ottoman and Turkish studies at the BIA, which in my position I'm responsible for. So the BIA, although, as was said, that I'm a literature specialist, the Ottoman and Contemporary Programme at the BIA funds research across all of the arts, humanities and social sciences, as long as they fit into these 3 objectives. So that's obviously to enable UK scholars across the humanities and social sciences to undertake world-class original research and fieldwork focused on Turkey and the Black Sea region, to encourage and facilitate collaborative research with other UK institutions and with scholars and institutions in Turkey, Turkey and the Black Sea region, and to maintain a centre of research excellence in Ankara focused on archaeology, history, contemporary studies and related subjects of Turkey. So although, as I said, I'm representing the Ottoman and contemporary Turkish studies side of the BIA, our work falls into three distinct areas. So archaeology, which is led by our director, Dr. Lutgarde van der Put, who's a classical archaeologist known for her work in the Pisidia region. Cultural heritage management, which is led by my colleague, the other assistant director, Dr. Shalay Gursu, who's a specialist who's worked on development projects at Istanbul Archaeology Museum and the Pisidia Heritage Trail, and also is currently writing a monograph on public understandings of archaeology at Bloomsbury, and then the Ottoman and Contemporary Studies, Turkish Studies section, which is obviously led by me. We've heard enough about me, so anyway. So the BIA itself was actually founded as an archaeology institute in 1947 by this guy, John Garstang. And Garstang has a very particular connection with the University of Liverpool, and the University of Liverpool is still a university that we collaborate a lot with. And Garstang first conducted research in Turkey between 1907 and 1911. And one of the questions we often get asked actually is why we're in Ankara and why we're not in Istanbul. And it is mostly due to John Garstang, who had a real interest in Hittites. And so it was Garstang's interest in Hittites and Anatolian prehistory that led to the decision to locate the institute in Ankara and not in Istanbul. And most of the other, we'll come on to this a little bit later, but most of the other foreign research institutes in Turkey are based in Istanbul. So on the 22nd of November 1947, the Turkish Council ratified the foundation of the British Institute of Archaeology at Ankara, and the inauguration ceremony took place in January 1948. And you can see here from Ulus, on the big newspapers, it used to be a big newspaper in Turkey, announcing that the institute had just been opened. However, it was in 2004 when the BIA began its expansion to other disciplines. And the name of the institute changed from the British Institute of Archaeology at Ankara to what it is now, the British Institute at Ankara. And that really reflects our activities much better, I think, than the British Institute of Archaeology. So to give you an idea then, some of our most recent talks in Ottoman and contemporary studies have really spanned a whole range of different disciplines. We had, for example, Mustafa Manawi from Cornell University gave a talk on Arab Ottoman imperialists of Istanbul from his award-winning book, Losing Istanbul. Then just on Tuesday, actually, we had a talk from Shima Imshir, who's assistant professor at Koç University. She did a PhD at Manchester University. And interestingly, I actually first met at a BRISMES conference. And her talk was on health, literature and women in 20th century Turkey, bodies of exception. And we also, earlier this year, had a talk on Turkish television drama from Petra de Bruin from Leiden University, just looking at religion and secularism. Sorry for the email sounds. But also a new exciting project that we've just been working on is the launch of our podcast. So the BIA has launched a podcast now called Heritage Turkey. It's released every 3 to 4 weeks on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the BIA YouTube channel, where you can also have it with Turkish subtitles. And each episode features myself and Shalay in conversation with researchers affiliated with the BIA. And I think I should be able to show you our trailer.
The British Institute at Ankara is starting a new podcast called Heritage Turkey.
Join us every 3 to 4 weeks to hear about the research supported and generated by the BIA. We will hold conversations with researchers affiliated with the BIA,
Covering topics such as archaeology, cultural heritage, literature, culture, social anthropology, and much, much more.
So this has been a really exciting project, even though in that trailer I look like a little bit like I'm being held hostage, but nonetheless, it's a really fun project we've been working on. So, there we go. So the BIA is run between two sites. So we, as Martyn mentioned, like the other BIRI, we have an administration office within the building of the British Academy in London, but we also have a 2.5 floor research institute in Ankara. And we also have a guest house in Ankara as well, where visiting researchers can stay. So our institute in Ankara is home to the David H. French Library, which is named in honour of a previous director of the British Institute between 1964 to 1994. He was director. And it houses more than 65,000 volumes, including books, theses, maps, journals, audiovisual material. And we can see some of this here. So it's our resources managers, Burçak Delikan, just here, and Nihal Uzun, who's our assistant librarian. And as I said, yeah, all the major disciplinary fields in humanities and social sciences are represented. So we have a really very good, to be honest, I would say, compared to British universities, I think it's actually a quite exceptional library for contemporary Turkish studies as well. So it really is worth coming to visit. But also, following a designated grant from the British Academy in 2007, the Institute has really kind of developed this collection as well. So further to our book collections, sorry, I forgot to mention this. We also have a monograph series as well. So in collaboration with IB Taurus, which is obviously an imprint of Bloomsbury Academic, the BIA also publishes 2 monograph series. Ceren Lord at Oxford University is editor of our series on contemporary Turkey. And we also have Christopher Markiewicz, is at Ghent University, who is editing our Ottoman Empire in the Early Modern World. So if you have actually just finished a PhD that's within the kind of Turkish studies section, then you can, by all means, do get in touch, and you could your book could also be part of the BIA's monograph series. But yes, what I was also just going to say here as well is that the Institute also holds a digital repository, which has also been something we've really been developing and investing in the last few years. This was established in 2018, and the digital repository functions as a virtual open access archive, hosting digitalized material and information on the BIA's collection and research outputs since 1947 in accordance with FAIR, so findable, accessible, interoperable, even, sorry, not inoperable, interoperable and reusable principles. So in particular, the Institute holds photographs in various formats as well, like slides, negative films, prints that depict all sorts of interesting things like ancient monuments, archaeological sites, but also more recent material as well to do with the Ottoman and contemporary studies here. And we can see this is when it was launched back in 2000. Well, actually, this event was in 2023, but this was our formal launch. No, sorry. One big part of that, actually, or one big part of the digital repository section has been data related to the Feriköy Protestant Cemetery, which for anybody that knows Istanbul well, will know that there is a section in Feriköy, near Şişli. There is a Protestant cemetery. It's the largest Protestant cemetery in Istanbul. And there's lots of different people from British, but also Dutch, German, Hungarian, American, Swedish, and a lost Belgian that are all buried in this site. And we've been doing a lot of research into finding out the kind of histories of the people that are buried there. There's also a lot of Turkish Protestants that are buried there as well, which is also very interesting, but it's also a nice collaborative event with the Netherlands Institute in Turkey, the Orient Institute in Istanbul, which is German, the Hungarian List Institute, American Research Institute in Turkey, and the Swedish Research Institute in Istanbul. But if you're interested in that, you can find data on that on our digital repository. Another sort of flagship project for us has been Turkey and Britain, 1914 to 1952, from enemies to allies. And on that front, there were a number of different conferences and workshops, 2 in Turkey, so in Ankara and Istanbul, and 2 in the UK, London and Cambridge, and it led to an edited collection here with Routledge. Another offshoot from that was a very popular exhibition which we launched in Istanbul, which really looked at the long overlooked period when the British actually occupied Istanbul between 1918 to 1923. And Occupied City was shown at the Istanbul Research Institute in Istanbul. This proved to be a very popular exhibition. So it really is a very kind of overlooked moment in British-Turkish relations, which sounds like I'm euphemizing, but nonetheless is important to look at. Another key project for us has been the Sustainable Water Management project as well. So this project, led by a former postdoc, Ender Peker, and Akgünil Han, is a lecturer at Boğaziçi University. This project has brought UK and Turkish scholars and specialists, as well as scholars from countries like Germany, the US, Australia, Netherlands, and Iran, together to combat and look at kind of issue of climate change and enhance technical knowledge and experience of municipal staff in the Kadıköy Belediyesi, so the Kadıköy Council in a municipality even in Istanbul. And this also led to a series of different workshops and also policy documents. So this has been a really a big kind of impactful project for us as well. So having looked at these, you know, if you're interested in applying for grants and funding from the BIA, what can you apply for? Well, we have our BIA study grants, which are up to £2,000, and these enable researchers to undertake short periods of study in Turkey and the Black Sea region. We also have the BIA research grants up to £5,000, which co-finance research projects relating to all historical periods up to and including contemporary Turkey, with a particular focus on comparative and cross-disciplinary approaches. And we also have the BIA large research grants, so up to £10,000. And these are aimed at directors of large-scale research projects. But all of these need to be related to and can be undertaken in Turkey and the Black Sea region. But do note that the deadline is actually fast approaching. It's the 27th of October. So, you know, and if you are interested, then please do get in touch with me or Martyn, and we can also give some more advice on that. Another one is the Doughty Wiley Fund, and those are 2 grants of up to £1,000 each, and they're available to support postgraduate students in any of the fields of arts, humanities, and social sciences to participate in fieldwork or other research activity in Turkey. And in addition to that, the BIA will offer successful applicants accommodation at the BIA hostel in Ankara, which is actually surprisingly nice. The hostel is like really, really nice, actually. So just to, so again, applicants for that just need to be enrolled on a master's or PhD program at a recognised UK higher education institution. But there's also a really nice support here for Turkish scholars to come to the UK as well. And this is the Turkish and Black Sea Scholars Fund as well. So that support is available for scholars of postgraduate status and above from Turkey or countries bordering the Black Sea to travel to the UK as well. And those awards are up to a maximum of £5,000. Another one as well here, again, David French comes up again. So this is not just for archaeology though, this is across all different disciplines, and that's for £1,000, and that's for research on anything to do with Turkey and the Black Sea region. I've just seen that I'm running out of time. So I'm just going to move on to say we also have a master's dissertation prize, and that was won last year by Andrew Peake from SOAS. So if you're a master's student and you're doing a master's thesis to do with Turkey and the Black Sea, please do have a look at that. But importantly, we also have postdoctoral fellowships, and those are hosted for 12 months. And they'll be announced around March 2025. Do get in touch with me if you're interested in applying. It would be great to have more postgraduate researchers on Turkey and the Black Sea. And just to give a flavour of who's got them recently, I was a former BIA postdoc fellow, and I was doing a project on Turkish travel writing of Britain. But we also have current postgraduate is postdoc is Dr. Elif Neyze, who's working on Byzantine history. But we've also had projects on Turkish football, sustainable urban development in Rize, Turkey. We've also had late Ottoman Armenian history and late Ottoman art history. Last of all, oh no, the cat's gone. There was, there we go. We have an institute cat, so it's a very nice environment, and we also have a really cool housekeeper and caretaker that regularly make cakes and things like that. So there we go. I'm stopping now. So anyway, thanks very much.
Thank you, Peter. Again, I'll use my position to maybe remind the audience, please, for all your questions, use the Q&A. This is a session that's focused on the funding opportunities, in these institutions. If you have different, comments or observations or recommendations you would like to share with BRISMES, I will put the website, the link for the website, just to make sure that we're not confusing, the different elements of the event. So next on our list is the CBRL, or the Council for British Research in the Levant. And we are going to listen from Dr. Kamal Badreshany, who's a CBRL trustee and the chair of its research subcommittee. He leads the Durham Archaeomaterials Research Center, an analytical research facility based in the Department of Archaeology that offers advanced chemical and materials analysis for academia and industry.
Sounds quite boring. Hold on, I'll just share my screen now. Thank you. Well. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Perfect. Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm Dr. Kamal Badreshany of Durham University and chair of the research committee at CBRL. And I just wanted to present some opportunities from the CBRL, tell you a little bit about us and what we offer in terms of funding and what we offer in terms of research facilities. The Council for the British Research in the Levant is its area of remit is the Levant. And for those who don't know, it's the Cyprus, Israel, Jordan, Palestinian territories, Syria, and Lebanon. And of course, we fund research and fieldwork across a range of disciplines within the humanities and social sciences. And we have two journals very well regarded, actually. Levant is an archaeology journal, and it's one of the top rated journals in regional journals, actually, in the field. And Contemporary Levant is also very well regarded and very much up and coming. And we also published a monograph series. So though we fund research across a wide range and ever increasing range of humanities and social sciences projects, and actually looking to expand into non-traditional areas, we do encourage applications, let's say, addressing topics related to one or more of 5 current major research themes. And you can see these listed below. But things that cross-cut these themes are particularly advantageous to us. So these are heritage. We look at the states and societies and cultures of the Levant, cities and urbanism, both medieval, modern, ancient. I myself am very interested in ancient urbanism, and this is one of my core research themes. We also do quite a lot, as you can imagine, in the area with refugees, migrations, and it is a major research focus for us. And of course, as Peter was mentioning, working a lot in before Martyn before him, talking about sustainability and resilience, and joining these the other BIRI in doing so. Okay, and just to show you our facilities in Amman, we have various meeting rooms in a very nice neighborhood in Amman called Jebel Webde. Aside from the meeting rooms, we also have our digital archives, libraries, and a wide range of storage facilities, which I'll show you pictures of in a little bit. And we no longer have hostels in Amman, but we have facilities for people to stay when they come visit right next to our offices. So in terms of our funding opportunities, we do fund a wide range of projects and have a wide range of great opportunities that are ever changing. So even from what you see here, I think it's always worth checking the website. One of our big opportunities are the project grants, and these fund a range of fieldwork and also analytical projects of all types, and they are for, a range of different scholars, early career, established researchers. You must be based at one of the UK's higher education institutions or a kind of research organization that is UK based and fits a similar structure. And these can provide funds for up to £10,000 per year. We also offer residential fellowships, and these are for early career research, and we sort of define that as within 10 years of obtaining a PhD at a UK university. So even if you're no longer in the UK, you can apply for that opportunity. And the idea here is that you would undertake a period of research, archaeology or some other subject, normally 3 months at the CBRL Amman Institute. And here it pays for flights and room and board, and that opportunity is worth up to £4,000. We also have a range of opportunities within our regular grants for doctoral students registered at UK HEI institutions, so higher education institutions, or postdoctoral members of staff at UK higher education institutions. And that will, generally speaking, enable travel to and from the Levant, from the UK to the Levant, and that opportunity is could be worth up to £1,200. We do offer also research support grants for graduate students. The nature of our funding means that the pot of money for graduate students is not as large as it is for postdoctoral researcher, and that's a British Academy guideline, but we do try to offer opportunities to sort of support the next generation of researchers. And one of the opportunities I'd like to talk about specifically is this Andrea Zerbini Award, which offers up to £4,000 for doctoral students from universities not only in the UK, but actually from the EU. Andrea Zerbini was an archaeologist working in the Levant and very sadly passed away young. And this bequest came in his memory and is administered by the CBRL on behalf of his family. And the opportunity is very it draws widely. You can be from any university in the UK or the EU, but you have to be studying sort of a topic related to archaeology and heritage anywhere in the Levant. And I will say, as director of research, this opportunity isn't necessarily as well taken up as you would think. So we really encourage people to apply for this because the money is there to help you. And we also have a unique program here where we do network partnership awards. And these are generally meant to enable a UK and a Levant-based scholar at any career stage to develop research applications. And we're sort of priming, let's say pump priming. So, you can apply for up to £2,500, and the idea, you could use this money to either visit the Levant and network with Levant-based scholars, or bring Levant-based scholars to the UK and develop various research collaborations in the hopes of applying for grants. Generally speaking, we do cover mostly the Levant, but where there are regions just outside the Levant, it says Egypt here, but also even Turkey, where the primary aim of research would be very relevant to the Levant, we would consider funding work on those areas. So, for example, refugees in Egypt or in Turkey that are Levantine refugees. Okay, and actually I got this a little bit backwards. I'll show you. We have a lab brand new in Amman. I'll just show you here what it looks like. And we have an ever-expanding facility and a large collection, zooarchaeology collection, and we have a repository of paleobotanical information. And this is an ever-expanding lab. We have facilities, microscope facilities, artifacts processing facilities. We've introduced a new digital visualization lab, or that's in progress actually, where we'll be able to undertake 3D modeling. We have a wide range of comparative collections. And again, we have a great library in Amman ready for people to visit and utilize. So it's really worth thinking about a visit if you're conducting research in the region. I mean, we aim this to be a hub where you can do initial process work from field work, process information from field work, and then have a start on your research. Okay, and I just wanted to provide some links. I mean, obviously, we run a range of activities and lectures. I'm sorry I didn't include information on this. I was sort of instructed that this was mainly to talk about research opportunities, but looking at Peter's very excellent presentation, and by the way, I just want to say that podcast looks amazing and very impressive, and I will check that out almost immediately. But CBRL also does a similar range of runs a similar range of programs. Though podcast is one I think we need to maybe think about at our next research committee meeting. But we have a large range of lectures constantly going on that are very interesting and will appeal to a wide range. And you can really obviously look at the link here to look specifically at grants, but obviously our website has information. And if you follow us on social media, you'll have access to all that information as well. So please do come and visit us, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kamal. Now we move on to our third speaker. So that's Professor Rosalind Wade Hudden, who's going to be speaking on behalf of the British Institute for the Study of Iraq. Professor Hudden lived in Baghdad between 1969 and 1971, and has been a member of BISI since 1973, when she started her undergraduate studies at the University of Birmingham. She gained an MA in Islamic Art and Architecture from the American University of Cairo in 1992, and a PhD in Islamic Art and Archaeology from SOAS at the University of London in 2012. She's worked widely on different archaeological projects in the Middle East, including Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, and Yemen. She worked on the decamp prior to the Ashmolean Museum's extension in 2006, and catalogued the British Museums and the V&A, Victoria and Albert's Hertzfeld Samarra collection from 2013. The latter project was the recipient of a BC Pilot Scholarship. She's also contributed to numerous publications, including the Gertrude Bell volume published by BC in 2017. She's currently finalizing her contribution to the Noor Collection's Later Islamic Pottery volume, besides organizing the Islamic Art Circle at SOAS and serving as chair of BISI's Trustees.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Sorry you've got me this evening. Unfortunately, no one from our outreach department could come. But anyway, I'll give you an overview of the British Institute for the Study of Iraq, which was founded as the British School of, British School of Archaeology in Iraq in 1932, in memory of the renowned explorer and diplomat Gertrude Lothian Bell. Thanks to a legacy left by her upon her death in 1926, she made provision of £6,000, which was a lot of money in those days, to the trustees of the British Museum for the creation of a British School of Archaeology in Iraq. The school's excavations at sites such as Nimrud, Abu Salabik, and Samarra gave unprecedented insights into diverse periods of Iraq's past. Gertrude Bell was an explorer and archaeologist of the Near East and a powerful official in the British administration in Baghdad after World War I. And as honorary director of antiquities in Iraq, she founded the Iraq Museum in 1923. To honor our founder, a conference was held in September 2013 to outline her many achievements. The proceedings were published by the British Academy. And to quote from the introduction, it was Gertrude Bell's interest and involvement in the history and archaeology of the Middle East that shaped her approach, not merely to the understanding of the vanished civilizations, but also to the peoples and societies that she encountered in her travels. This is still true for field practitioners today, spending weeks in a small Mesopotamian village and working closely alongside the locals one learns so much more than simply the occupation layers of an ancient civilization that are being excavated. The first, sorry, this is just a few pictures of Gertrude. On the left was Babylon and taken in 1909. And on the right, the Cairo Conference of 1921, when she was the only woman attending. So going on, our first director was Sir Max Mallowan, who in the 40s and 50s, alongside his wife, the crime writer Dame Agatha Christie, led excavations to the Assyrian capital of Nimrud. Mallowan's team brought to light city walls, private residences, administrative buildings, cuneiform tablets, and thousands of ivories. Many of these finds are now housed in the British Museum and have gradually been published in monographs by BC. Dame Agatha also donated generously to the school. It was during its active decades in Iraq that the school carried out a wealth of fieldwork and research, from prehistoric settlements at Dabariya, Apachia, and the capital of the Abbasid caliphs at Samarra. Many of these findings and these excavations are documented in our annual journal, Iraq. Moving to the present, from the late 1940s, the BSAI maintained premises and a library in Baghdad. During the Gulf War, the school was forced to close, and it transferred its library and other effects to the French and British embassies for storage. The library has now been moved to the Basra Museum, which is another project that BC is heavily involved with. But as I'm concentrating on funding opportunities for BRISMES members and everyone else working in Iraq, I think the time doesn't allow to go cover that as well. So in 2007, the school was renamed to the British Institute for the Study of Iraq and broadened its academic coverage. Today, we support the study of Iraq from prehistoric times to the present, including social sciences research on modern and contemporary Iraq. Throughout our history, collaboration with Iraqis on the interpretation of their history, society, and culture have been a vital part of what we do. BC launched its Visiting Iraqi Scholarship Program in 2005 in order to offer Iraqi academics and heritage professionals with the opportunity to undertake short periods of research at UK partner institutions, universities, museums, and libraries. Since then, we have awarded over 30 scholarships. We receive generous in-kind support from the British Academy as one of the BIRI institutions, and the British Academy provides us, like everyone else, with office facilities and venue space for public meetings and events. So membership, the benefits, everyone can become a member of BC, wherever you live in the world. And by joining, you help support our work and promote research. And then I just detailing the benefits of membership, the option to describe to the 2 peer-reviewed journals, monthly e-bulletins, 20% discount on our publications through Oxbow Book, in fact, is now called Pen and Sword. So they just had a sort of I think it's a bit of a palace revolution and there. Priority bookings to our events, and then a printed copy of the annual report and accounts with examples of here. But what we like to emphasize is that you do not need to be a cuneiform specialist, scholar, or an archaeologist to apply for a BC grant. Grants only fund direct costs, though. This is really to be noted from the students, applicants. It's there for direct costs such as equipment, travel expenses, consultancy fees, accommodation, etc., and may not be used to support institutional overhead, salary costs, PhD studentships, or other living costs. And I'll go on to outline what we have. We have outreach grants, normally up to 1,000 a year, which are designed to support public engagement projects that promote understanding of Iraq's history, society and culture. And our annual deadlines are the 1st of April and October. I should really emphasize at this point, all this information is available on the website, but this I'm just going through to list. So do check and see what is available. And research and conference grants are normally up to £6,000. So we provide funding support for this research and focus principally on the lands and the and history of the people of Iraq. Annual deadline for that is the 1st of April. And eligibility is you must be employed by or have an official connection with a UK higher education institute. And this just gives you an example of previous research projects, which so you can see the sort of the variety and the definitive proof that it's not just archaeology that we're helping fund. So it is a very wide scope. Oops, sorry. So, and these are projects, examples of conferences that have previously people have received funding for. So again, you can see there's a sort of fairly broad scope. The annual pilot project, which is normally up to £10,000, is designed to support a short period of preliminary research up to 1 year that has the potential to grow into a longer term, larger scale project supported by a research council or other large funding body. Only one project annually will be funded under this scheme. And again, the eligibility for applicants should normally be employed by or have an official connection with a UK higher education institute. And then we'll list past pilot project grants. So we're going sort of backwards from 2022, Taif al-Khudari, Gendered Networks of Power, the Parliamentary Quota, and Women's Substantive Political Representation in Iraq. 21, Dr. Caroline Sands and Jafar Jothari, documenting the tangible heritage of religious minorities, Sabian and Mandaean, Jewish and Christians in the Diyala. And all these past projects of grants and so on, we do require that the recipients do write a little sort of short article in our annual newsletter, and then hopefully if there's more material coming out, we through the publishing branch, we do publish a lot of monographs and so on. So recent publications, here you'll see there was John Curtis, who is our current president, who's was keeper in the Middle East department at the British Museum for a long time. And he discovered these handwritten letters from William Kennett Loftus, who was working in Iraq in the mid-19th century. And he discovered it was a relation, a descendant of his, who handed these books, bound books of letters, which he'd sent back to be circulated amongst his friends. And it's a wonderful insight into travel within the 19th century Iraq. And then tablets from Sipar, that was to honor Farooq al-Rawi, who's an Iraqi archaeologist, a Syriologist who left Iraq in the early 90s and established himself here at SOAS. And then we have hold regular lectures and webinars. And I'm just putting this up as one sort of this month. So if anyone's interested, this is hybrid, so you can sign up through the website, Eden in Iraq Wastewater Garden Project. 2011 to the present. And this is a wonderful project, and it's going to be a sort of a discussion evening with all these participants. So each speaker will present. It's a collaboration project between Meridel Rubenstein, who's the project director and artist, environmental engineers Dr. Mark Nelson and Dr. David Tocchetto, and Jassim Al-Assadi, managing director of Nature Iraq, who is an NGO. Each speaker will present different aspects of this innovative project and will highlight the interdisciplinary approach that is key to the project's success in promoting both environmental restoration and cultural preservation. So, I mean, and we have the November lecture, for instance, will be, which is the annual Mallowan lecture, will be by Dr. Jonathan Taylor from the British Museum on the Nimrud libraries. So, I mean, we do have lots of different activities going on throughout the course of the year. If you have any queries, you should direct all these to Ali Khadr, who is the BISI's executive officer. He's the only full-time employee. It's because sadly, I mean, it's still been impossible to have any center in Iraq or anything at the moment. But I mean, people are going to and from Iraq. It's not impossible to get to. We do have this wonderful project helping with the Basra Museum, which was they converted one of Saddam Hussein's old palaces into a museum right on the Shat al-Arab, and it's becoming quite a sort of hub. There's a nautical museum, Safina project, which also has been allocated a building. So I think, you know, tourism is certainly an interest in Iraq, is sort of returning, but sadly, I mean, the current situation won't help that at the moment. And thank you for your attention. And if, as I say, if you've got any questions, please direct them to Ali. And if you've got any questions to me, very happy to answer them now, if I can. Okay, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Tell us a bit more about yourselves. I should add, I didn't concentrate. We do have quite a few scholarships for Iraqi nationals, but I thought this BRISMES was more for what's available for UK-based students, so I haven't sort of outlined them. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Rosalind. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, we don't have to list, I guess, all the scholarships. I think each one of these institutions, if we were to go into details, would necessitate, right, its own event. But really, the idea is just to introduce the public to, I would say, the breadth, right, of each of the institutions do. So yeah, thank you. And this takes us to our fourth and last, but also not least, institutions. That's the British Institute for Persian Studies. We have two speakers. We're going to hear from Dr. Shabnam Holliday, who's the current research director and chair of the Research and Publications Committee at British Institute of Persian Studies, or BIPS. She's also associate professor in international relations at the University of Plymouth, and her research focuses on Iran's relationship with the international and decentering the discipline of international relations through the case of Iran. We also have Dr. Robert Steele, who's a postdoctoral researcher at the Institute of Iranian Studies at the Austrian Academy of Sciences. He has a PhD from the University of Exeter. We are colleagues. I'm an Exeter-based lecturer, and has held fellowships at UCLA and LSE. He's an Iran specialist and widely published, and his latest publication is Pahlavi's Iran's Relations with Africa, Cultural and Political Connections in the Cold War, published by Cambridge University Press. So for Shabnam and Robert, the floor is yours.
Mute. Thank you very much for your introduction, and thank you very much to everybody for coming to this session. So I'm just very briefly going to explain what the different activities of BIPS are. But just to be clear that we cover, and I think Martyn's map was very helpful in this, the Iranian and Persianate worlds. So if you consider yourself to be part of Iranian and or Persianate studies, then BIPS has got funding for those areas. We have 4 areas: outreach, which has online webinars, and they are available once the webinar has ended. Digitization activities, publications, we have 2 monographs and the Iran Journal, and then research funding, which is what I'm going to focus on now. So we have 3 different types of grant. And Robert here is one of our grant holders for the Research Assistant Grant. So I'm going to go through these quickly, and then we're going to have a Q&A with Robert, because the Research Assistant Grant is perhaps the most complicated, but it actually is very important because it offers opportunities beyond the UK higher education institution, but also for independent researchers. So all these details are available on the website, but just to be clear, the requirements for an application, you will need references, a risk assessment, and it's really important that you've thought through your research project. So a very, very clear research plan, and also importantly, a letter from your host institution if you're postdoctoral. So the research grant and the research assistant grant are for postdoctoral. So that means you can apply with a research grant to hold your own workshop, for travel, for field work, or to give conference presentations. And this is quite important because obviously travel to Iran is not possible, and we are unable to fund any travel to Iran because of, or any other place where the FCDO advises against. So we've got to think creatively about how to support our research and your research in this environment. The research assistant grant is somebody needs to be from a UK higher education institute to be the applicant, but they name somebody else as a research assistant to be part of their research project. And that person does not necessarily need to be from a UK higher education institution. And then we have the student travel grant. So this is for PhD students. We get quite a few MA students and some undergraduate students who want to travel for language support. And this covers fieldwork, conference presentation, and also language. And in this instance, no host institution is required. Now, the reason we need a host institution letter is that the funding for the 2 research grant and research assistant grant goes directly to the university institution, and then they pay for, they basically hold the money, and then the principal investigator takes from that through the university. When I think one thing I really wanted to mention, and this was quite helpful for me, certainly as a PhD student and early career researcher, is the grant holders workshops. So once anybody who gets a grant, all our grant holders are then required to present at a grant holders workshop. And this provides a really important networking opportunity, and an opportunity to get constructive feedback from both within your discipline. So if that's, politics or art history, but also across the humanities and social sciences. And I think that's a really important environment, especially when it's difficult to travel to the places that you actually want to do your research on. So I'm now going to move on to a sort of a short Q&A with Robert, because he has been through the process of applying for or being part of an application. And then this will hopefully give you an idea of how it works, but also how to think creatively about your research. So Robert, thank you very much for joining us. So could you just briefly introduce yourself and your situation at the time of the application?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so Sabiha very nicely introduced me, but I could just say that I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Institute of Iranian Studies at the Austrian Academy of Sciences here in Vienna. And I moved around quite a lot after finishing my PhD at Exeter back in 2019 or 18. And at the time of the application, I was actually an independent researcher living in the Netherlands.
Thank you. And what was the research project that you were part of, and what was your role in it?
The title of the project was History, Culture and Ideology in Pahlavi, Iran. And it examined the relationship between culture, ideology and politics under the last Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who ruled from 1941 to 1979, looking in particular at the development of historical writing. The project was led by Professor Ali Ansari at the University of St. Andrews, and my role was research assistant, investigating specifically as part of this project the contribution of the intellectual statesman Shojaddin Shafar in the Pahlavi state's cultural policy. Now, Shojaddin Shafar was the Deputy Minister of Cultural Affairs at the Imperial Court of the Shah, and in this role he spearheaded all of the cultural projects at the Imperial Court, composed the Shah's speeches, and was a ghostwriter of the Shah's books. And the final book of the Shah before the revolution was titled Towards the Great Civilization, which was ghostwritten by Shafar and which was published in Persian in January 1978 and has never been published in English before. In fact, I'd often assumed that it was never even translated into English. But on a trip to Paris a few years ago, on a research trip, I was very surprised to discover that an English translation actually had been done by the Pahlavi Library before the revolution. But of course, the Pahlavi state fell before it could be published. Professor Ansari and I received a copy of this unpublished manuscript on loan. And my part of this project was essentially analysing the text itself and exploring the contribution of Shafar in its composition.
And so how exactly did the grant support you? What were you able to do and what were you named to do on the application?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, one of the difficulties for many academics studying Iran is that we can't access archives in Iran or other sources, libraries. So for historians, we have to be quite creative in how we develop these research projects. But actually, there are many excellent resources outside of Iran that we can use, and that I did use thanks to this BIPS funding. And I'll go through a couple of them here to give you an idea of what the grant supported. So the main resource for the project was the archive of Shojaddin Shafar held at the Bulak in Paris, which I've worked extensively on over the course of several trips during the past few years. And this archive contains correspondence and reports relating to Shafar's work at the court, along with his vast library, which was donated to the Bulak. And this library includes all of Shafar's published works, of which there are many. I also worked at the Library of Congress, where the most important resource was the newspaper of a political party that Shafar founded in the 1940s called Mihan Parastan, which they have on microfilm. And to my knowledge, this is the only copy of the newspaper outside of Iran. So being able to access and study this was extremely valuable. I also traveled to the Hoover Institute in Stanford, which holds the archives of Ardashir Zahedi, which is one of the most important Pahlavi-era archives outside of Iran, and the archive of the librarian Nasser Sharifi, who worked with Shafar closely on a library project in Iran in the 1970s.
Thank you. So by being a research assistant named on somebody else's application, you were therefore able to pursue your, to have access to this kind of funding to be part of a wider research project. And how did the, how has this helped you in your own research and towards future plans?
Well, this research has been very fundamental to developing my new projects that I'm working on here at the Austrian Academy of Sciences. And that project is about cultural politics in modern Iran. And the major part of that is an intellectual biography of Shojaddin Shafar. And much of the material I'm currently working with was collected while researching for this BIPS project. The main result of the research is the publication of this book, Towards the Great Civilization, which is the first complete English language version, which is edited by me with introductions by Professor Ali Ansari and myself. And I think this is going to be a major contribution to the scholarly literature on ideology and cultural politics in Pahlavi, Iran. And that's going to be published next month by IB Taurus. And yeah, so this work, essentially my work for the next few years, working on this biography, is a continuation and expansion of the work I did as a research assistant with the support of BIPS.
Thank you. So one of the reasons that we wanted to do this, to do a Q&A with Robert between myself, is to show the kind of support that's available to early career researchers, but also to show that I think those of you who are familiar with BIPS will know that we've had two types of grant, research grant and student travel grant, for quite some time. But the research assistant grant is a new one, and it's a new one that we've introduced to try and deal actually with the challenges of COVID during COVID, but also to deal with the challenges of not being able to go to the places that we necessarily research. So it's really, and I think sometimes it's easier when to talk to somebody who's actually been through the process. So I'll just finish there because I know we're running out of time. But if you do have any questions, as the research director, my name is the name on the website, but also you may come across Sylvia Ferreri, who's our general manager. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shabnam and Robert, for this. I think it was very useful. The Q&A format, I actually like it. I might steal it myself for other events. I would like to remind the audience, if you want, if you have questions, ideally as specific as possible, for our panelists. But until then, I have actually a couple of questions which I think would be relevant. And since most of the audience are actually PhD students in their latest stage or early postdocs. And for someone who's not necessarily had a training, right, in how to write a grant application, etc. And this is a question for everyone. Maybe one or two of you want to take, answer it. How many months would you say? What is the timeline, basically, right, from when you think about an idea to put in the grant application? And maybe in your answer, reflect a little bit of what would be the role of the supervisor, the student supervisor, or their environment, or, yeah. And it's really open, but I mean, we'd love to hear from all of you. Yes, Shabnam, please.
I think that's a really useful question, because I think it depends at what stage of your career you're at. So we've changed our application forms to be quite specific about the kind of information we want to help applicants, especially early career researchers who don't have a lot of experience, of what is the important information that a funder would need. So, and I think we are obviously less, we don't expect as much from, MA students or PhD students, but certainly from a PhD student, we need to have an understanding that they understand why they want the funding. And obviously for more advanced scholars, this should be quite, they're already thinking about the next project as you go along. So I think it's very difficult to say, but I think if you are a PhD student or you're a postdoc and you're beginning to look for research funding, start thinking about your output, start thinking as soon as you can about how this is relevant, other organizations that you can work with, because as all these BIRIs have shown, is that we can only give small amounts of funding as part of bigger projects. It's often seed funding. So, or you're not necessarily going to get a lot. So you need to think about your collaborators, who else might be interested. And it's getting very competitive. So it does, I think your ideas need to be quite well formulated.
Thank you, Shabnam. Martyn?
Yes, as Shabnam says, I think similarly to the BIA or any of the BIRI, it varies depending on what stage you're at. So we have I guess at the sort of lowest student level, we have some funds that could potentially be accessed by undergraduates or master students. They're usually for things like if you want to go and conduct field work in the country, or you sort of join an excavation or join an existing project. And there, obviously, the application process is much more straightforward, but you would expect really the supervisor or the leader of that excavation or survey or whatever it is to support that. And then as you sort of get, I mean, our awards go from that level right up to senior academics, where you would then be, expecting a much more formulated grant application. One thing I would add is that certainly the way the BIA approaches it, when we're talking about the things aimed at master students or even undergraduates, the applications tend to be very straightforward. We just want to get an idea of what your thesis is going to be about and how this grant would help further that. So you need to visit an archive or whatever it is you need to do. When we're getting to the ones that are available for PhD students, I think we tend to try and use our grant forms, our actual application forms, partly to help you think about your project in a way that then if you want to access other funding, which obviously most academics are going to at some point or other, it will start you thinking in those kind of ways. So it's sort of that transition between writing a PhD proposal through to applying for sort of research grants, like to a research council or something like that, or for a postdoc position or a fellowship or something like that. So what we try to do certainly is formulate our applications in such a way that by thinking through the grant application process for a BIA grant, it gives you a bit of a way to bridge that gap. And the other part of the question was how long in advance to start thinking about it. I think in most cases, I would say certainly for the grants that we give, most of the projects are pretty clearly formulated, either because they're we announced the call that we have open now, we only announced about 2-3 weeks ago, so we have about 6-7 weeks between the grants being announced and the deadline. So really, if you're you can't sort of wait for the deadline and then start thinking about a project. It would need to be something that's already in progress or is already been conceived. And obviously, if you're applying to join, you're a student and you're applying to join another project, then that would be a project that's already happening. Whereas if it's something that you're doing as part of your PhD or as part of your postdoctoral research, really it needs to be sort of fairly fully developed. Then you apply for the BIA funding or the other BIRI funding, and then you potentially access further funding. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Martyn. We have, I have more questions, but one of our participants, Sandra Montoya, are Latin American independent researchers aiming for a postdoctoral stage eligible for our institution's funding options. If so, which ones?
Well, I mean, Tace, I mean, it's really, if you are within a British, a PhD program, which is at a UK higher education institute, it doesn't really necessarily, for us anyway, correct if I'm wrong, but I don't think it really matters where you're from. It's just the fact that you are within, a UK PhD program. So in theory, you can be from anywhere, but as long as you're, in a UK PhD program.
Thank you, Peter. Well, we still have a few good, I would say 10 minutes. I do have a couple of questions. I hope the participants will agree with me that they're useful. So one thing you all have in common is these, I would say, really important archives, right, that you have. And again, for, thinking with a student, how do they know what's in the archive? How do they know if the particular question, that they have could be answered, in the archives that you have? What are the actual, action points that you would recommend for them to do? Thank you.
I suppose I could start by saying, I mean, of course, the easiest thing to do is to ask, someone what's in the archives. But I did want to say that one of the things we're moving toward CBRL and have been, I think the other BIRIs have mentioned a number of digitization initiatives. I mean, our library is it's searchable online, and not everything is in there, but it will soon be, hopefully, in really using FAIR principles, very, very, very findable and searchable. So it should be the place to start, really. But then if you're not sure about something, I think you can always ping an email to someone who will know at the CBRL, and that would be, or any of these institutes, I think that would be a useful way to get started.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. To say, yeah, whichever it would be. I mean, we also have on our digital repository, we have a searchable section, so you can have a look through there. We also have our library catalogue online, so you can search through there as well. But if you're unsure of anything, you can always send any of us an email, and our email addresses are on the website.
One thing that might be useful to add is that at the moment, the BIRI's archives and are in the process of being digitized and are mostly separate in the sense that we have our own digital infrastructure at the BIA and the other institutes have their own. The plan in the medium term is to connect those things up so that actually so for example, if you're interested in somebody's work who was associated with the BIA and they went and conducted field work, or you want to look at their archives, you wouldn't necessarily have to know to go to the BIA and to know what you're looking for. You could potentially search across the different collections, and that's where all this indexing and making things accessible comes in. The digitization initiative is very much a work in progress. It's something we're working on a lot, I think all of the BIRI, and but there's a lot of material as much as anything else.
Yeah, thank you, Martyn. I mean, yeah, this might be a little bit maybe what hasn't been, well, Rosalind did touch upon it, right? But clearly the region is not at all doing well, right? And everyone, and the funding, so the geopolitics, everything. And yeah, one really has to think, right, about the question of being able to access this material. We have two questions, one from Felicia Campos, very similar to Sandra's. So does the CBRL have anything for postdocs or a postdoc research/project grant? I've been a travel guarantee, and the Amman team is absolutely amazing. Thanks a lot. So that's from Felicia. And okay, are these the answers? They sound more like answers or recommendations. So yeah, another one also is from Carla. We'll have also CBRL will also have a digital repository. So maybe one last question for our speakers. What about the possibility of affiliation, right? Let's say again, a student with their supervisor have a project. Maybe they.
Just really quick, I don't think Felicia's Carla works for the CBRL, and she was just saying we have a digital repository. I think to answer Felicia's question, that yes, we do have most of our funding is postdoctoral, and in fact, the postdocs can apply for the regular project grants. So as long as they're affiliated with the UK university, then they're free to apply for any of our funding opportunities, actually, that are for the postdoctoral scholars. But our main body of funding. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, definitely. Thank you. This is what I meant, the overlap with the previous question. As long as the students are, or whoever is applying, right, is based at the UK.
Well, but there's different funding for postdoctoral level and
right.
Doctoral students and graduate students. And my understanding was this is to do with the nature of the way our funding at CBRL is allocated by the British Academy, but most of our programs are aimed at postdoctoral scholars, but kind of by necessity in some ways. Someone might say that's wrong, but I think that's unfortunately the way it is. It's much harder to use our grant for funding graduate students.
Right. Thank you. Okay, we have a new one from Fatime Bayatfar. I would very much like to know if research about the Persian language is also supported by BIPS. Maybe this is a question for Robert and Shabnam.
Yeah, so research about the Persian language. Yes, we do. Absolutely. Persian research on Persian language is within our remit. So definitely. Yes.
And maybe the question above by Naveed Ghadili. Sorry, Naveed, for some reason.
Good research assistant grant from Institute of Persian go to Iranian National. Okay, thank you for that question. That's a really important question. So the way that the funding works is that the applicant has to be at a UK higher education institute. The applicant needs a letter from their host institution saying that their host institution supports the research. In the case of the possibility of financing somebody in Iran to do something, it depends on the host institution. So we would need evidence from the host institution's finance department that they can support that. I mean, it's easier for example, people often put, if they're running a workshop, they may put people coming from Iran as people who to attend that workshop, and then that's fine because then the funds go through the university. But if the research assistant is based in Iran, that gets more complicated and it's really up to the host institution. But I would suggest that, because it's so complicated, it's better just to email myself or the general manager, and then we can advise you specifically.
Thank you, Shabnam. Well, I think the same goes, I think your last question, well, so we have one from the affiliate with Harvard residing in the US. Are they eligible for funding? I'm going to, well, they're not based at the UK university, right? So, but I think also maybe we can go back to this question and ask, what about affiliates? You know, like, can you be in the US having an affiliation, not per se being based, but maybe affiliation with a UK institution? Would that allow them to, apply? And yeah, we have other questions. Yes, please, Kamal.
Oh, I was going to say, I wonder if that depends on university to university. So I think for CBRL, we would look at the university as the guarantor kind of. And so if someone is willing to, if Durham is willing to let someone apply through them, then fine. But I think I've been in situations where honorary research associates, for example, at Durham are not allowed to apply to grants. So, I can't say for sure, but I don't think that necessarily has anything to do with the CBRL, but it's about how Durham views it. So other UK universities may see it differently.
Thank you, Kamal. Yes, Martyn?
I think this is one of those things that's different between the different BIRI and also different between the different funding streams. For example, at the BIA, if you have, for example, an honorary fellowship at a UK research institute, doesn't even have to be university necessarily, you would be eligible for some of our funding programs. It just depends. So I think that's one where I would say it's worth checking the individual BIRI that you're interested in and the individual funding opportunities available. Some of them are things like if you have a PhD from a British institution in the last 5 years, you might be eligible to apply for it. In other cases, as I say, an honorary postdoctoral research fellowship an honorary research fellowship might be applicable. I think that just varies. I think you would just need to check.
I should add that's absolutely correct, because one of our opportunities is for for people who have UK PhDs and they need not be associated with a UK university. But I suppose for the postdoctoral funding, the stuff that comes at CBRL, stuff that comes from the British Academy grant, that generally needs to be done through a UK university and applied for, and the money will then go to a UK university. So in our case in particular, it would depend on whether or not they're willing to allow you to apply through them. There are opportunities for.
And it's worth saying, if someone's from the US, I don't know, I'm pretty sure it's the case for other regions as well, but ARIT, for example, American Research in Turkey, has a whole postdoc system and funding available. So you can definitely get in touch with them, and we collaborate with them on different issues as well. So there's that.
Thank you. We'll just can we answer very quickly the last two questions, please? So one is Gulf countries and green transition. Which one of the BIRI's institutions do you think would be closer to it? I know we only saw 4 out of the 9 institutions. And the second one is which funding that would cover the Syrian heritage, such as the Mamluki period. Any takers?
I mean, Syria is an easy one. That's CBRL without a question.
Mm.
Mhm.
But Mamluk could go into Egypt as well, though.
Mhm.
And in fact, the EES's chair now is Doris Abu Saif, who's a Mamluk specialist.
Yeah, sorry to repeat what I said in the answer to the previous question, but I think that's another one where it's worth looking at the website, because the answer is it depends. But there are opportunities, yes, but it's worth looking at the, particularly if you remember that map I showed a little bit earlier, there are areas of overlap between the BIRI, and then it comes down to specific grant schemes and specific disciplines and things like that, and the research initiatives. That's the sort of detail I would just have a little look on the website. I think we all try to make the information as accessible as possible, and then if you still have questions, we all have our email addresses. We want to hear from you, so obviously we want applications. So.
Well, thank you, Martyn. Thank you. Well, I'm going to go Peter, Shabnam, Robert, Martyn, Rosa, Kamal, and Rosalind. Thank you for your time. Thank you for giving us well, an introduction, right? Somewhere to start. And yeah, thank you. And on behalf of everyone at BRISMES, have a great evening. This has been recorded. You can go back and see it on our website. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everyone.